All right, we are back. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek here. Guys, it is officially training camp. We are back, baby. It's about time. It has been forever. Yeah, throw that hat away, put on a horseshoe. We are here, man, and we are excited. It's here. I mean, gosh, we've been talking about it for months and months now, man. But here we are, actually able to talk about some stuff that's not just speculative. Like, we're able to actually talk about some live things that are happening, which is amazing. So really, really pumped for that, man. And just want to kind of preview this training camp because there's a lot to talk about, a lot of storylines, a lot of things to watch when it comes to training camp 2024 for the Indianapolis Colts. So we're going to get into all that. Before we do that, just want to let you guys know this episode is presented by PrizePicks. So be sure to hop over to prizepicks.com today or use their mobile app. And when you sign up, use the code BTJ for a $100 deposit match. All right, Derek, let's hop right into some of the storylines here for the Indianapolis Colts when it comes to training camp heading into the 2024 season. I think the first one, and clearly I think the most important one, has to be Anthony Richardson. Number one, Anthony Richardson's health, which appears to be full go, which is great. Number two, Anthony Richardson's development. Not his development as a runner, but his development as a passer. We already know Anthony Richardson can run. We know he can be dynamic in those ways. But how, as a strictly passing quarterback, does Anthony Richardson look? Right? Because he had all a training camp. He had preseason. He had a few games in the regular season, but he didn't have a ton when it came to the regular season when the live bullets are flying. So what do we see from year one to year two with Anthony Richardson? What does he look like here off of that? Obviously, that shoulder surgery, right? How does Anthony Richardson look, right? Is there any rust to start off? How's that shoulder? How's everything with that? And just as a passer, how has he grown from his rookie season? Talk to me about AR, Derek.
Well, I will say, to kind of answer a little bit of that last bit of that segment question that you had, I think the great aspect of this is that throughout the entirety of this offseason, he's been throwing, which I think is actually a tremendous thing because remember, a lot of people were initially, his recovery was initially don't start throwing until like end of April, maybe even May. I mean, you might be lucky to be able to do some of the off-season work before training camp. But, you know, we saw again, he was throwing at the end of February. I mean, the guy was way ahead of schedule. So, I mean, thank goodness for the 21-year-old, 22-year-old body that, you know, is still has those years left of growing, which is awesome. But I think what's awesome about this offseason has just been how much work you have seen Anthony Richardson put into it, not just from the therapy, but just, you know, getting those reps throwing this year that we even just saw just the video the other day of Michael Pittman, him, Richardson, and a bunch of other weapons from the Colts offense out in Cali working out, you know, so, I mean, they were putting in some work. And Anthony Richardson has put in just as much work, if not more work, than everyone else. Now, as far as his development goes throughout all this, I don't have any worries, Cody, because I have already, we both have said from the moment that the Indianapolis Colts drafted Anthony Richardson, the kid sounds like a very mature person and has a very smart head on him. So no doubt that he is a smart dude. He has already talked about how football is his world and he wants to make the best of it. And I fully believe that. And when you heard Shane Steichen talking about Anthony Richardson at the combine this year, people were asking him, you know, what makes Anthony Richardson special? And he talks about how Anthony Richardson knows where to go in the offense before the snap even happens. Like, he knows how to anticipate when things are open. So I'm fully on board with the idea that as far as like the mental aptitude of this, I think Anthony Richardson has everything there that he needs. And he'll continue to grow as he gets more physical reps on a football field going up against defenses. The big thing is, Cody, is like you said, is the one thing that we had the problem with last year was some of those throws, right? Like a few of those throws, they were obviously short or obviously long. And you could see it. And that's always been an issue with Anthony Richardson. But again, it all comes down to how much work has he put in to be fixing that? What kind of work has he put in to be more accurate of a quarterback? If he's improved his accuracy even a little bit, then this is going to be just super fun to watch Anthony Richardson sling that ball this offseason.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the ways that he's just grown as a player and as a quarterback. Obviously, that's going to be a major, major thing in just his development from rookie season to year 2, Anthony Richardson. And so, also what is some of that, a little bit of, the scar tissue from that major injury, right? How does that help him as a player? How does he take that and use that to help motivate him and also make him on the field, I think, just a smarter quarterback as well. So I'm intrigued with that when it comes to AR, all of his development, everything like that. Now, there are a couple other things, Derek, that you're kind of looking at when it comes to some of the skill positions for Anthony Richardson in this Colts offense. You obviously talk about the running back behind Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, obviously, he's good to go, which is awesome. You talk about the running back behind him. You talk about some of the wide receivers behind Michael Pittman. You talk about really all the tight ends on this roster. A lot of different players there that could potentially become key pieces for this team. Talk to me about some of these skilled positions, because obviously you want to surround AR with the guys who are the most capable and most talented as you can to really help him, continue to grow as a quarterback and continue to develop as a player. So talk to me about some of these skill positions for the Colts here and what you're kind of looking at with really all 3 of these positions and all those guys who are going to be in that competition.
Yeah, the Indianapolis Colts have some of the most intriguing young weapons in all of the NFL when you look at it from that perspective. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, everyone knows it. Jonathan Taylor is a top running back in this league when he is healthy. Anytime you have a running back that garners that much attention and that much respect from defensive coordinators, that immediately changes how a defense handles the offense, that immediately opens things up for Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen, which is the first great thing that you can expect from the Indianapolis Colts this year. Now, going to the weapons, like you said, we've talked about the 4, 5, 6 wide receivers that the Indianapolis Colts have that can really be utilized in a lot of different ways. Michael Pittman, who's quickly ascending as one of the better wide receivers in the National Football League. He's pretty much a do-everything type of guy. Josh Downs, who just set the rookie record, franchise record, rookies for catches in a season. Alec Pierce, who's a vertical threat that can score in any moment if you get him the ball at the right spot. And Adonai Mitchell, who was one of the most intriguing weapons in all of the draft this last year, falls to the Indianapolis Colts. And then when you look at the tight ends perspective, you've got a great collection of talents from the tight end group and a guy returning in Jelani Woods, who is primed to have a huge comeback in 2024. There's so many opportunities here, Cody, for the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, knock on wood, this group, this weapons room is deep. Outside of the running back room, you don't have a ton there, not with Zach Moss gone now, but like wide receiver and tight end room, you are deep for Anthony Richardson, and you got a lot of things that you can utilize this year for Anthony Richardson. And as long as he remains healthy and the majority of the roster skill-wise remains healthy, there's going to be nothing that slows this offense down.
I don't think we probably give enough confidence, I suppose, to Trey Sermon because, while he hasn't really panned out so far in the NFL, I mean, I do feel like he is a very capable player that maybe just hasn't been in the right position. I mean, how many times have we seen that before? We even saw it with Zach Moss, just couldn't find his footing in Buffalo and comes over to Indy and really finds himself the last 2 years. So I'm hopeful that Trey Sermon is kind of a similar story where he can kind of be that backup to JT and spell him when he needs to, because I think he has some really good traits that you like. Obviously, he's talented. He's a former third-round pick from the Ohio State. So, I mean, definitely something there, Derek, with Trey Sermon. But you're right. I mean, this group definitely has a lot of potential. I mean, especially the wide receiver room. I mean, the cool thing is you got a couple different guys with a couple different skill sets. You have the big possession guy in Pittman who maybe is never going to go crazy. He'll have those games where he'll have, 100 yards, but he's never going to go, absolutely insane. But you have Alec Pierce, like you mentioned, deep threat. You have Mitchell, who's just a big play waiting to happen and very exciting young player. And then Josh Downs is your slot and a couple guys there that are going to potentially round out your special teams that have some exciting factors to them as well. So it's very exciting when it comes to this room for the Colts for sure. Now, one thing, Derek, that I'm going to be looking forward to, speaking of the draft, is looking at that defensive line room. It's going to be quite interesting this year because I mentioned it already when we looked at the defensive ends and kind of talked about the battle for the guy who's going to be opposite of Samson Ebukam at the edge position. But the defensive line, I think, Derek, this is the deepest it's been in the Chris Ballard era. And I don't really think it's been close, honestly. Like last year it was pretty deep, but this year I feel like it's the deepest it's been in Chris Ballard's tenure as a Colts GM for sure. I mean, you got guys everywhere, Derek, on this defensive line. You obviously have Latu, who you drafted. You have Ebukam, who had a breakout season last year. You obviously have Buckner and Grover Stewart, and have some young guys that you've drafted. Brought in Raekwon Davis. So, I mean, really, when you look at this defensive line, it is a unit that is deep and potentially has some guys that could do some really, really good things. And it has that potential, Derek, to be the best defensive line in the Chris Ballard era. I really do believe it has that potential. But what say you about this defensive line? Because not everybody can get the reps. I mean, somebody's going to get inevitably left off because of how many guys are going to be competing in this room. So I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but I'm just intrigued to see kind of how it plays out. Like, how does it play out with the first unit, the second unit, and how do the reps kind of work themselves out here?
Yeah, you're right. This defensive line unit is very deep. You can go at least 5 deep on this defensive tackle group, and you could go at least 6 deep on the defensive end group. So there is a lot of opportunities here, and you got to wonder if anyone does potentially get left out because of it. But there is a lot of questions about this defensive line unit. How much of an impact does Charlie Partridge bring to improving this line? Does Latu take a lot of snaps away from Kwity Paye? Does Kwity Paye improve as a pass rusher? Does DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart go back to their better ways? Do you have Dio Adangbo ascending this year with all things considered, a very important season for him? What is Tyquan Lewis's role? Is there somebody else that steps up like out of Tomiwa? So there's a lot of things to focus on for this defensive line unit. And we're going to have to really keep an eye on it because we're going to be at camp a few days. We're going to try to keep track of everything that's going on, but it'll be interesting to see who steps up and who does what, because come that first week, I'm curious as to see who is still remaining on the roster and what does everyone's roles look like.
Yep. Going to be quite interesting. You're right with that. I think a couple other things I want to look at, Derek, when it comes to this defense. I mean, you got to obviously talk about that third linebacker because we already know the 2 entrenched starters, but who's that third guy? There's multiple guys that are going to be competing for that position. But even so, Derek, looking at that, talking about this young secondary, I think that's the bigger one of note when it comes to this unit because you have a lot of guys that are entering years 2 and 3 that are going to probably play major roles on this football team. I mean, you could have 3 guys, that are under the age of 25 who are going to play some serious roles for you. And even that, Julian Blackmon is 25 as well. So, I mean, a lot of youth when it comes to this secondary for the Indianapolis Colts. And it caught up to them at times last year, but, another year in the system for a lot of these guys. What do you expect here when looking at this young secondary for the Colts and kind of how it's going to play out?
Yeah, so when it comes to the secondary, it'll be interesting to see who on the back end of the group actually plays well enough to be able to come in and do something. Like Jalen Simpson, it'll be interesting to see if he gets any good significant amount of snaps. Obviously, Ibrahim, it'll be interesting to see if I don't know if he'll remain as a slot corner or if he's going to end up staying on the outside. I have no clue, but it will be interesting to see how that group shapes out. And of course, the cornerback two battle that we're going to talk about, that is obviously one of the bigger questions of it all. Does Dallas Flowers come back to form, or has Jalen Jones done enough to, basically insinuate that it's his time and that he's ready to take over this full time? And also, seeing how Juju Brents does this year as well too. I mean, we didn't get to see him last year at this time, at least not for the first couple weeks of training camp. So he didn't really get much of a chance, but this time he's going to come into it all healthy and ready to go. So it will be a lot more fun to see what does Juju Brents have to go up against, and does he show some of that greatness that we saw at certain points last year. So does he keep that going?
Yeah, there's a lot there when it comes to the secondary. And, I'll be intrigued to see, especially free safety. I mean, that's the biggest one for me, is like, how does Nick Cross look in year 3? I mean, if there's any time when you would use the phrase do or die, it is that for Nick Cross. It is that he has no more excuses. He needs to go in there and be a average to good safety. If he can do that, you feel a million times better about this free safety position. But if there's more of the same, like there has been the first couple years, you might be saying, Chris Ballard, get a free agent safety in here. Get Justin Simmons or Quandre Diggs on the phone right now, because that was the Achilles heel last year, and you've done nothing, right? So hopefully, Nick Cross especially can prove why the Colts traded up for him in that 2022 draft, and he can prove he is the guy long-term moving forward for this organization and for this free safety room. So that is the biggest thing I'm looking for when it comes to that with the young secondary. And obviously with the young corners, just them taking another step would be huge. Juju obviously is the health-related thing as well, just him staying healthy, through the course of training camp, because this will be his first full training camp coming in healthy. So that is definitely a big thing when it comes to Juju as well. So those are some of the storylines, guys, here from training camp. Derek, any other thoughts you have about training camp that maybe we didn't cover, maybe we should be talking about a little bit when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts? I mean, obviously, the offensive line's pretty much entrenched at this point. Really curious with some of those young guys the Colts took on day 2, day 3. How does that kind of factor in, when it comes to this offensive line with Tanner Bortolini and, obviously Matt Gonzalez as well? But any other thoughts you have, Derek, or anything else when it comes to previewing training camp, things you're looking for, or anything else we didn't mention?
I think another thing we're not talking about too is, it'll be interesting to see how Shane Steichen approaches this year. We keep talking about these players, we keep talking about everyone else's development and how they do, but how does Shane Steichen do in year 2? And a lot of it is going to come down to what does he act like? How does he talk? How does he run his offense? How does he run his team in year 2 as a head coach now? Remember, we saw this Indianapolis Colts team, and it was a first-time head coach who is in his 30s. He's still figuring things out. So, I mean, there's a lot of great opportunity for Shane Steichen, who is so invested as being a coach in this league. And he definitely is going to have a lot of opportunities this year, and I'm super excited to see what does he do in year 2. What does he have cooked up? How does he change what he did last year? I mean, what's he going to do? And I think that's something a lot of people aren't asking right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very much looking forward to Shane Steichen in year 2 with a healthy, hopefully, Anthony Richardson for the year, Jonathan Taylor. That combo is going to be exciting. But yeah, Shane Steichen year 2, what's it look like? What are the tweaks? What are the criticisms he maybe, has seen and is trying to improve on? I'm curious on that when it comes to Shane and him in year 2. So really looking forward to that. But guys, it's going to be fun. Really looking forward to the next couple months here leading up to the regular season. Let us know your thoughts here when it comes to the Colts training camp. Any storylines or any players that you're watching in particular that you definitely think we should be checking out or not sleeping on? Let us know all those things in the comments down below. But guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, guys, go Colts.